Okay, let's jump into this deep dive. We've got some really interesting source material here about Buddhist practice, and it kind of flips things on their head.
It really does. The central puzzle, based on these texts, is how you approach Buddhist teachings when the core idea is anattā, no permanent self.
Right, that everything's interconnected, nothing stands alone. So the big question is, if there's no stable me, how do you actually apply any of this in life?
And that's where the sources challenge us immediately. They question that gut feeling that you are this solid self doing things. If everything just arises and passes based on conditions, with no fixed agent pulling the strings, well, who exactly is left to practice?
And this concept, anattā, not self, is key here. The sources say all realities are like this.
Yes, all of them. They arise purely because conditions are right. There's no abiding controller.
Just momentary things happening.
Exactly. Real, but fleeting. Arising, ceasing, not owned by anyone.
Which brings us to the really surprising statement in one source. Buddhists don't practice Buddhism. What's that about?
It sounds pretty provocative, right?
Yeah.
But the point seems to be about the word practice itself. It often implies a fixed person, an agent, doing something over time.
And that clashes with the whole not self idea.
Precisely. If experiences are just conditioned realities, then framing it as I am practicing reinforces the very notion of a self the teaching aims to see through.
So, okay, when I say I see the screen or I feel happy, that's conventional language, but not quite the ultimate reality described here.
That's how the sources seem to frame it. They use examples like seeing, hearing, feeling, attachment, aversion, happiness, sadness. These are realities arising from conditions. Saying I see or my hand implies a doer or owner that in this ultimate sense isn't there. It's just seeing arising, touching arising.
Okay, but then isn't this a massive dead end? If there's no me doing things, how does anything change? How does the path develop? The sources talk about practice being overreaching and doing nothing being standing still, so.
Right, the classic dilemma.
Yeah.
But this is where they introduce the Buddha's middle way. The path doesn't develop because you force it.
Okay.
It develops, according to these texts, by itself. Through dhammata, the natural unfolding based on conditions.
The path unfolding itself? How does that work? What are the conditions?
The sources suggest a kind of chain reaction. You listen to and consider the teachings. This conditions confidence.
Right.
That confidence then conditions effort. Effort conditions awareness, sati. And awareness conditions insight. It's all dependent arising.
So it's not I decide to be confident. It's more like understanding the teaching causes confidence to arrive.
Exactly. It's an impersonal process driven by conditions.
And the AI summary we looked at mentioned two kinds of understanding.
Yes, pariyati and patipati. First, the intellectual grasp you get from listening and thinking.
Okay, the theory.
Right. And that intellectual understanding then acts as a condition for the second stage, patipati. That's the direct awareness, sati, of reality appearing right now.
Just seeing, just hearing.
Just feeling. Arising and passing, moment by moment. Understood as it is.
And the really crucial point, the summary highlighted this, is that there's no I making this understanding happen.
Absolutely key. Understanding arises because the conditions for it are present. You can't just will it into existence.
Trying to force it, like, I must be aware now, is actually
counterproductive, according to these sources. It reinforces the ego, the sense of self. That's called the wrong path here. Understanding grows more naturally when the conditions, like listening and contemplating, are cultivated.
So what's the outcome then? What happens as this understanding grows?
The sources point to gradual detachment. Not detachment like being cold or unfeeling, but...
And more like not clinging.
Exactly. It's not about stopping thoughts or feelings, but understanding them as conditioned, impersonal phenomena when they arise.
Seeing them for what they are.
Yes, this helps you differentiate these momentary realities from the stories we build around them, like, this is my problem, or that person is making me angry.
Which ties back to the root of suffering, as described in the sources.
Right. Problems stem from ignorance, misunderstanding reality, and the attachment that follows. Not really from the external events themselves.
So understanding things as conditioned, uncontrollable, and not self gets at the root cause.
That's the idea presented here. It addresses the fundamental ignorance.
So summing this up, the big shift isn't about a self taking control and changing things. It's more about setting up the right conditions.
Like listening, considering the teachings.
Which allows understanding and direct awareness to arise naturally, impersonally. And this leads to less clinging because you see reality more clearly as conditioned and not self. the path sort of makes itself.
It's a profound reframing of effort, intention, the whole spiritual journey, really.
No, it really is. So here's something to leave you with.
Oh.
If understanding and the path arise just from conditions without a controlling self, what does that mean for our everyday sense of making choices, putting in effort, even feeling responsible? How might things look different if we viewed our actions and experiences through that lens as just conditions arising?